here's what the listener, watcher, thanks for sending in, wants to know. They want us to give a breakdown of how to read the Bible for beginners, and then they define what a beginner is. They say, I've read some verses my whole life, I've heard the stories since childhood, and it really hasn't stuck with me. So they want to know, first of all, how to read the Bible for a beginner. And then they go on to say, I find it hard to follow meanings of the messages and take away stuff from my everyday life. And then they go on to tell us, I just got myself an amplified study Bible, which we'll come back to and talk about in a minute. And then their final statement is, I know I am not at the place for a discipleship group yet. So let's start with the first part. Reading the Bible, if you're a beginner, you're just getting started, you have a hard time understanding the Bible, what do you guys think are some key points to remember and how to go about doing that?
Translation you can understand.
Yep.
Yes, that's very
Start
important.
not with the Bible, but the New Testament. Start not with the whole New Testament, but the 4 books about Jesus.
Yes.
So pick any of those 4 books about Jesus. Get a really easy to understand translation.
Mm-hmm.
And in particular, if you're wanting a specific book to start with, I think John or Mark, if you're going straight into
agree.
one of those.
Depends on your personality. I think
Yeah.
if you're a person who likes action, read Mark. Mark
Yes.
is
Yes,
action
it's
packed.
Fast paced. You
Yeah.
could legitimately read it in about an hour if you
Oh,
just
yeah.
sat down and read it straight through. It would not
Mhm.
take you long. But
Yep.
but John, in lots of ways, at least to me, I always love it when we do. And I know we're going to talk about this later, so I'm not getting to it. But when we're in our discipleship groups and we
Yes.
get back to John,
Yes.
in my group, we're just now back to John. There's a very personal feel, which obviously all the gospel accounts are either written by someone who walked with Jesus or was written by someone who was with somebody who was with Jesus. Anyway, the book of John has this very personal feel to it that I really like the way he writes. So I would say John or Mark or.
All right. And so, Ed, you mentioned a good translation. I would speak more to that as well. For me, my current favorite translation that I'm reading is the New Living Translation. I think
Very
it is
good.
a good balance of really good translation skills, but also written in a modern day kind of flow where it's very easy to understand. And I also think they do a good job of taking some more difficult words or concepts, and they break them down into more easy to understand phrases that they don't use words that we don't use these days, I guess is the best way I'm saying, like, sanctification, propitiation, which a lot of people don't use these days.
I don't know anybody that uses
I don't know
them
anybody that
not,
uses
that's
those.
not a preacher.
Not to say they're bad words,
I
but
don't know, I was at a cookout and someone said propitiation.
Did they really?
Yeah, we were talking about all the
In reference
sacrifices
to
we
the
were going to
barbecue?
make. Oh yeah, sure, we were going to sacrifice those barbecues. and all
nice.
that. Yeah.
Okay, well, anyway,
propitiating.
so go look that word up. But they take words like that, and then they break them down to what they actually mean in
Right.
common language. I like that. I think it's helpful. It's helpful for me, but it's definitely helpful for people, especially when you're first getting started.
And that tends to be what the 3 of us would most often teach out of. I used to be an NIV guy because it was the new translation
It
when
was.
I was in college.
Me too.
But I ain't been in college for a day or two. And so
A few.
and they were still hanging on to, they said it was 7th grade language. I bet if you ran it through now, because the way our language is, it's a higher level
I
than
agree.
that.
Sure.
I agree.
I think the New Living is it's what I try to use most often to
Me
teach
too.
now, just for that reason. It uses more common language words.
Sure.
And a good translation should be common language. And I think
Yes.
people mistake that. They think, well, the Bible's supposed to be hard to understand. No.
No.
They were trying to write it to people who they wanted to understand it. They didn't.
Well,
they weren't writing puzzles.
The New Testament is written in something called Koine Greek,
Right.
which is
Right.
called Street Greek at
Right.
the time, which is the level of Greek that was spoken by the common folk.
That's
Right.
right.
So anytime you're taking a translation and trying to make it for common people, you're doing what the original writers were doing anyway.
That's
Right.
exactly right. I think that's I think most people think the Bible's supposed to be hard to understand. You get a good translation when most of it you do understand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
At least you understand the words.
Yes.
Yes.
You should understand the words.
Enough to ask questions and to
Yeah.
get into it. But
That's right.
yeah, it doesn't leave you in the dust completely.